Welcome to Tea in Transit, Sunday, October 22nd, 8:42 a.m. in Maui, Hawaii. Gate 50 is in line 3, adaptability. Now, we don't have the exaltation. We have the detriment, but I'll read the exaltation. The moon exalted, that which, when unable to make it alone, will naturally align itself with nurturing and protective forces. The awareness that to maintain one's principles and values, the support of others is necessary. Detriment, which is what we have fixed today, is a resentment when its natural mental gifts are ignored and is forced to curry favor in order to survive. Discomfort with the awareness that one cannot stand alone by one's principles. Interesting. So here we're looking at the ability to accept that the truth that no man is an island, and whether or not we are able to maintain our principles and welcome the support of others, or the discomfort knowing that my principles alone are not enough for success. Very interesting. So we're fixed in that detriment, is a resentment when its natural mental gifts are ignored and it is forced to curry favor in order to survive. So this is like having to maintain relationships and being all bitter about having to maintain the relationships because you think that your brilliance and your genius ought to provide you the resources alone and that you shouldn't need other people. Which I definitely feel that a lot in my life. Like, I don't want to need other people. But this Discord is actually teaching me how beneficial it is to have layers of responsibility to communities, and layers of responsibility to the community. I think the way of the West has been so individual and collective and very non-tribal, which is I think to our detriment has created hyper collectivists and hyper individualists. And this gate right here is a part of the tribe, right? And so there are always those people in the tribe that don't necessarily fully fit in. And it's most of the time it's because their own head is getting in the way, and they're seeing something that maybe is not necessarily there. Disconnection from focus and interest in accomplishing physical goals. Energy was really good just a few days ago. I was enjoying it. I feel like I'm waving goodbye to that focus. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, it's like the realities of whatever it is you have to do to achieve those physical goals. And I'm projecting here because this is what happened to me. As you guys know, my hut is going to be torn down, and I have to build, or I get to build, another hut. And carpentry is something I'm handy, but I'm not I don't necessarily trust myself to build a wall and build a house and make it sound and watertight and stuff. And so that kind of got me down a little bit because I was like, oh, damn, there's a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of skills that I don't necessarily have. And in that melancholy, I'm looking through Facebook, and I come across this things called SIP panels, which is basically, it's pre-made walls. It's steel, insulation, steel, and they're like Legos, and you just block them together. And I could assemble that on the ground here without a trailer, and then bring a trailer in, and then slide the trailer underneath it and drop it down is one of the options that I have. I could also just build it on the ground and then put it up, Yeah, I do that a lot. I say I have to do something, but then I realize I get to do it. And that's the kind of shift of the mutation, right? Is realizing and shift in the concept of melancholy, because while the 50 is important right here, one of the biggest things that we're all experiencing collectively is this format channel being online. Humanity will experience, each being will experience the transits in different ways. But one thing that's really important is when those format channels are active, which are the channels between the root and the sacral. The reason those are so important is because they set the tone for the rest of the circuitry that happens in the body. So every individual circuit is going to have some kind of melancholy to it, whereas this one is about limitations, coming up against your limitations and mutating them. The 2212, which is the solar plexus to the throat, that's a melancholy around not having anyone worth listening to or not being listened to. That melancholy creates beautiful words and beautiful music and beautiful poetry. The individual wave between the 57 and the what is that one? The 57 and the 20, of course. How did I forget 20? Right? That one is a melancholy around like not being able to exist in the future, right? Extinction. And then that then comes up into enthusiasm, which is the voice of the now. So each of these format channels, is giving us a glimpse into how the overall circuitry works, which in our case, this 360, the 3 is in Earth right now, or the Earth is in 3. This is one that is about the individual channel and this concept of like, you got to be with the melancholy, right? Like you got to, and a lot of times for me, melancholy is linked to grief. Again, that's just me. And so questions that I have is like, what parts of my individuality am I letting go of? And again, for me, my experience of this gate has been realizing like I have an ego that holds these walls up energetically, and it's helped me make money for my family. It gave birth to this discord. It's like a a space that I've filled with my energy and my my momentum. And so now that that's coming down, I've had a lot of doubts and scarcity and fear around like, oh, without this building, am I going to be able to still provide for my family? And the answer is going to be, you're either going to figure it out or you're not. So which is it going to be? And of course, it's like, well, I'm going to fucking figure it out. So here I am figuring it out. So with that being said, let's go to gate 3. Read the line 3, which is survival. It's the ability to recognize and distinguish between fertile and sterile in their various manifestations. Exaltation, which we don't have, is in reproduction the ability to choose the best mate. An innate knowing of what is sterile and what is fertile, where the mutation is specifically biological and dependent on collaboration with others. Detriment is the perverse denial of evolutionary standards, an innate contrariness which refuses to mutate. The refusal to mutate. Being young and dipped in folly, I fell in love with melancholy. That's sweet. I love that. One thing that just made me think about is like, people ask these hilarious like high questions all the time. That's like, yo, what would you call that color if you didn't know the name of that color? And one thing that I think about more seriously these past couple of days has been like, how would I treat my melancholy if I was never conditioned to treat it any which way? And I've had to, I didn't come from like your emotions are bad so much as oh, I'm uncomfortable, I want to make you feel better kind of background. That's how my parents were. And so there wasn't necessarily a danger of feeling my emotions, which I know some people grew up with, which I perceive as being harder to come back from, although that's not necessarily always true. I perceive it to be that way. And my sense is that, we all have some level of conditioning around our emotions, and seeing them as weak, seeing them as a lot to deal with, seeing them as something that, and I even talk about it a lot, you don't want to project on others. But the tribal wave is so much about, and the tribal way of being and human life is so much about being in connection with others. And I think Faye posted it in the general chat about how she's feeling, or and maybe emotional about how she's feeling, like very disconnected from her tribe, like a very tribal being that's lacking touch. And so that's been something that I've, even though this is like a very individual transit, 50 is part of that tribal wave, but this 60 and 3 is like, it's very prevalent right now, and I know everyone's feeling it, because I'm feeling it. Well, we're talking about inline 3, is this, again, we feel the energy coming from the transits today is this perverse denial of evolutionary standards and an innate contrariness which refuses to mutate. It's the refusal to mutate, which could look like the refusal to allow yourself to be in the melancholy, It could look like a refusal to fully let go of an energy that may have been present, soul prospering, right? Um, because it's like while these transits are active, one thing that I think about is like the next time this will be active like this is going to be another 6 months, maybe a year, you know? And so if I'm being given an opportunity to experience this energy, how am I going to experience it? Right? Because, we're not here to make big decisions because of the transit energy, but, what is the feeling like? What are the, also too, this is important. What are the physical markers of refusing to mutate? Right? Resistance to inevitable change. What are the ways that I refuse to mutate? Right? And so this is how you can use a detriment to your advantage, is understanding that it's natural for life to mutate, but what are the ways that I am participating in the blocking of energy? Like, a lot of people are always trying to figure out how to paint themselves as the hero in the story of their life. And one of the perspectives that I've been getting is that if you're always the hero and you never are the villain, there's an inherent disharmony with that way of viewing yourself and viewing the world. If you never view yourself as the villain, then you never get to view yourself as the villain, right? And then the villain's tactics and the villain's strategies and motivations are unknown to you. Whereas if you can let go of your perception of things and shift perspectives, stand in the villain's, okay, I know how, like, I want to be seen as the hero, but how am I showing up as the villain? How am I participating in this story as the villain? I have a hard time being the villain even when I know I need to do it. Know thyself, even the difficult parts. Yes. So there's this game called Mafia that I freaking, I'm just gonna figure out a way that we could play it on here, and because that would just be so fun. Anyway, and how the villain reaffirms you to why you choose what you choose. True. Yeah, exactly. And it's about understanding the patterns. It's not about breaking the patterns. It's about understanding the patterns, because so many people go in with this mentality of like, I want to shift this, that they will make it seem worse or better than it actually is, rather than, hey, I just want to see what this is. Once you see what it is and you see that it's there, then you can respond, as opposed to seeing it, reacting, and like immediately going towards making your decision. Again, so much of human design is really just like hammering in this cardinal rule of like, hey, fucking be patient. Just be more patient. It's actually really funny. Like, there's a deeper thing than strategy and authority, and it's chill out and be patient, right? Because you gotta, for most generators, they have to be patient with responding. Some of them think they're responding, but they're still reacting with the mind. And same for everybody else. A lot of manifestors want to initiate, right? They're excited to initiate, but because they're not waiting out their emotional wave, or because they're not listening to their spleen and giving themselves enough spaciousness, they're initiating the wrong things, right? So anyway, this whole like refusal to mutate is a very interesting concept, because I personally have feeling like I'm coming out of my own emotional wave around like my hut, and now I'm starting to get more into the excitement and the logistics and the practicality um, of this whole thing, which has been it's been it's been very real. It's just been super real, like literally coming up against this. I'm not going to be able to provide for my family type energy. I do not like to come up against that. Looking back back and reflecting, thinking like, oh, I should have worked harder and should have made more money, um, all that kind of stuff. That is all coming up, and you know, I often think like what to do with it. But because I'm aware of how, emotionally charged the situation is, I'm taking my own advice and I'm actually not doing anything with it. I'm letting myself be in the melancholy of it all. And I feel like the survival emotional wave is hitting quite a few folks. Yep. Yep. And it's, again, this gate brings context to confusion, context to order. That order cannot exist without confusion, and that if we don't have confusion, then we don't have order, right? So yeah, there's a lot of nuggets to the transits every time. I feel like, oh man, that wasn't enough time to fully extrapolate what is going on within the transits. And at the same time, it's important that we don't spend too long like microscoping into one thing, because that's just going to pigeonhole us, and that's not gonna be fun. So anyway, without dark, how would you understand the light? What is that? In Kingdom Hearts? He goes, the closer you get to the light, the dark, the longer your shadow, the bigger your shadow becomes. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for me. I gotta start getting ready to take my family to the pumpkin patch and deal with this. I get to go out and be with around a bunch of people at the pumpkin patch who are all refusing to mutate. So best believe I'm gonna have my fucking goggles on and like watching people and being like, oh yeah, that dude is refusing to mutate. That girl is refusing to mutate. That person knows that they're refusing to mutate and is doing their best to allow the mutation still. Yeah, I'm really curious how this is all going to go. So thank you guys for tuning into the show. Let's see, any announcements to make? Not really. I'm going to make the forum posts for this one, and yeah, I think that's it. Love you guys. Peace.